class, let's go through the operations on real numbers. The basic operations in mathematics are addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. So in today's class, we'll go through these operations on real numbers. So we know real numbers are basically divided as rational numbers and irrational numbers. So let's see the basic operations between two rational numbers. So first let's see addition between two rational numbers. So 2 by 3 and 5 by 3 are two rational numbers. These are called rational numbers because it's written in the P by Q form where P and Q are integers and Q not equal to 0. So I've taken the denominators as same so that you don't need to find the LCM. You can directly add the numerators. So 5 plus 2 is 7. So 7 by 3. When you add these rational numbers, you will get a rational number, that is 7 by 3. It is also in the form P by Q. Now let's subtract two rational numbers. So when you subtract 5 by 3 minus 2 by 3, you will get 5 minus 2 is 3. So 3 by 3. 3 by 3 is also a rational number. Now let's multiply two rational numbers. So when you multiply 2 by 3 and 5 by 3, you will get 5 into 2 is 10. 10 by 3 into 3 is 9. So 10 by 9. 10 by 9 is also a rational number. Now let's divide two rational numbers. So 2 by 3 divided by 5 by 3. That is 2 by 3 into 3 by 5. That is reciprocal of 5 by 3 is 3 by 5. So you will get this 3 and 3 cancel. So 2 by 5. 2 by 5 is also a rational number. That is, when you do the basic operations between two rational numbers, you will always get a rational number. Now let's see the basic operations between two irrational numbers. So irrational numbers means the numbers that cannot be written in the P by Q form. So first let's see the addition between two irrational numbers. So root 6 is an irrational number. Take the same root 6. You can take some other also. I'm just giving you some examples. So root 6 plus root 6 is 2 root 6. 2 root 6 is an irrational number because it cannot be written in the P by Q form where P and Q are integers and Q not equal to 0. Now let's take root 6 and minus root 6. When you add root 6 and minus root 6 is also an irrational number. That is, when you add these two irrational numbers, you get 0 as the answer. 0 is a rational number. Now let's see subtraction between two irrational numbers. That is root 6 minus root 6. That is 0. So you are getting a rational number when you subtract two irrational numbers. Now when you subtract root 6 and minus root 6, you get root 6 plus root 6. Root 6 plus root 6 is 2 root 6. It's same like variables. That is, when you have variables like x and 2x, you can add the coefficients. Similar way here, when the roots are the same, you can add the coefficients. So here we got a irrational number. Now let's see the multiplication between two irrational numbers. So when you multiply root 6 and root 6. Root 6 is an irrational number. So when you multiply two irrational numbers, you get root 6 into root 6 is root 36. Root 36 is 6. So this is a rational number. Now when you multiply root 6 and root 2, here these two are irrational numbers. When you multiply these two irrational numbers, you get root 6 into 2. 6 into 2 is 12. That is, it is an irrational number. Next is division. Root 6 by root 6 you get 1. This is a rational number. But when you divide root 6 and root 2, you get root 3 into root 2 by root 2. So this root 2 and root 2 gets cancelled and your answer will be root 3. Root 3 is an irrational number. So here you can see the addition, subtraction, multiplication and division between two irrational numbers. And when you do the addition, you may get an irrational number or a rational number. And similar way, when you do subtraction, you may get a rational number or an irrational number. And when you do multiplication, the same way, it may be rational or irrational. So when you do these basic operations between two irrational numbers, you may get a rational number or an irrational number as the answer. But in case of rational numbers, when you do the basic operations between two rational numbers, you will always get a rational number. Now let's see the basic operations between a rational and an irrational number. That is, let's do addition between a rational and an irrational number. So here 2 is a rational number and root 3 is an irrational number. So when you do addition between a rational and an irrational number, you will get an irrational number. That is 2 plus root 3. You cannot add these two numbers, so you'll have to write it like that. Now let's see the subtraction between a rational and an irrational number. So 2 minus root 3. Here 2 is a rational number and root 3 is an irrational number. So when you subtract, you will get the same, that is 2 minus root 3. There will not be any change, that this is also an irrational number. Now let's see multiplication between a rational and irrational number. So let's take 7 as the rational number and root 5 as the irrational number. So when you do the multiplication, you will get 7 root 5. That is, it is an irrational number. Now if you check with division, you can see, so 7 is a rational number and root 5 is an irrational number. So when you divide 7 and root 5, you will get 7 by root 5. So here you can see, when you do the basic operation between a rational number and an irrational number, you are always getting an irrational number. So you have to remember one thing, that is, when you take square roots of a number as an example for the irrational number, you should not take numbers that are perfect squares. For example, if you take root 25, this cannot be considered as an irrational number. Here, the radicand, that is the number inside the radical sign, is a perfect square. So you can write this as 5, because 5 square is 25. That means root 25 is a rational number. So whenever you are taking square roots as an example for irrational number, you have to check whether the number inside is a perfect square or not. If it is a perfect square, it will be a rational number, not an irrational number. So from the previous examples, you can understand that the sum or difference of a rational number and an irrational number is always irrational. That is, when you do the sum or difference of a rational and irrational number, you will always get an irrational number. And the product or quotient of a non-zero rational number with an irrational number is irrational. That is, when you do the product of a rational and an irrational number or division of a rational and an irrational number, you will get an irrational number. One more thing you have to notice, that is, when you do the multiplication of rational number 0 and an irrational number, you will get it as rational. Similar way, when you divide 0 by root 5, you will get 0. So you should always select a rational number that is non-zero. That means you should not select 0. You should select some other number with an irrational number. Then you'll always get an irrational number as the answer. And if we add, subtract, multiply or divide two irrationals, the result may be rational or an irrational. That is, when you do the basic operations on two irrational numbers, the result may be rational or irrational. These are the things that you have to notice when you are dealing with the basic operations between rational and irrational numbers. So let's take some examples. Add 2 root 2 plus 5 root 3 and root 2 minus 3 root 3. So we'll write 2 root 2 plus 5 root 3 and you have to add it with root 2 minus 3 root 3. So take the radical signs with the same whole number inside, that is here root 2 and root 2 is the same. So you can add the coefficients. So 2 root 2 plus root 2 and here root 3 and here also it is root 3. So you can subtract these coefficients, that is 5 root 3 minus 3 root 3. So 2 root 2 plus root 2 is 3 root 2 plus 5 root 3 minus 3 root 3 is 2 root 3. So our answer is 3 root 2 plus 2 root 3. As the whole number inside the radical sign is different, here you cannot add the coefficients. Only when the radicand, that is inside, are the same, you can add the coefficients. So this is the answer. So this is an irrational number. Now let's multiply 6 root 5 by 2 root 5. So 6 root 5 is an irrational number and 2 root 5 is also an irrational number. So when you multiply 6 root 5 multiply by 2 root 5. So what you have to do is multiply the coefficients. So 6 into 2 is 12 and root 5 into root 5. Root 5 into root 5 is root 25. Root 25 is 5. So you will get 12 into 5, that is 60. So when you multiply these two irrational numbers, you are getting a rational number. That is, when you do the basic operations between irrational numbers, the result may be rational or irrational. Now let's divide 8 root 15 and 2 root 3. These two are irrational numbers. So 8 root 15 you can write it as 8. Root 15 can be written as, when you factorize 15 you will get 3 into 5. And here it is 2 root 3. So this can be written as 8 into root 3 into root 5 by 2 root 3. So this root 3 and root 3 gets cancelled. 2 and 8 you will get 4. So 4 root 5 is the answer. That is, when you divide 8 root 15 by 2 root 3 you get an irrational number. So what we learned is, when you do the basic operations between two rational numbers, you will always get a rational number. That is addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. Similar way, when you do the basic operations between two irrational numbers, the result may be rational or irrational. Whereas the case of rational and irrational numbers, when you do the basic operations, and one more thing, when you do the product or quotient, the rational number should be non-zero. That is, you should not take 0. Then the answer will always be irrational. Thanks for watching.